Hey boys and girls, welcome back to another BMW video. Today I'm going to be replacing the headlights on my 2007 335i E90 BMW. And the reason I'm doing that is because one of my lights got broken. Somebody backed into the car and the fender got tweaked and the light got completely shattered. And so I was looking at doing a fix myself as opposed to, I've got insurance, but it was going to be, if you replace it through insurance, I have adaptive lighting, and OEM costs for those is about $1,200. And yeah, my insurance is going to go up significantly if I did all that. So it sucks that you have to pay for insurance, but then you don't get to use it. So in this case, for now, I'm doing this. And what I found was, after some searching, this pair of headlights. It does come as a set. I've got one here. I've already installed one just to make sure that it works, and I can adequately review it. But we're going to go through the install procedure and the, just how it looks and everything coming up. All right, so what are these lights? These lights are by ACANII, and it's spelled ACANII. And they are specifically designed to work with an adaptive headlight package that you may have in your car. So if you have the Xenon adaptive lights, and you're trying to replace one, they are very expensive. Even on the used market, they still cost $400 or $500 a piece. And yeah, it's just really painful if you want to keep that functionality. This was a little over $350 to $400, something like that, on Amazon, and I decided to take a risk so that you could see if you like them and not have to take the risk yourself. All right, so what's the catch? Well, some of the equipment on the light needs to be transferred over from your existing Xenon adaptive lighting package. And so those things include, let's roll this over, you're going to be putting in the actual light, the light bulb, the Xenon light bulb. So hopefully that's not broken if you're in my situation, but they're not expensive. You can also get that on Amazon for about 40 bucks. You're going to be moving over right here the ballast for it, and you're going to be moving under this cap the motor for the adaptive lights and make the lights move up and down. And so what you're going to do is transfer that over. So I'm going to go through that process, all the tips and tricks I've learned in doing it myself. And that's pretty much it. After you've got that, you can pretty much plug it in. I plugged it in right here. It fits just fine, and there were no errors on the display. No coding was necessary, nothing like that. Now, there are some wacky things about this. So you've got this. This is exactly how it came. Pulled it out of the box. Absolutely zero instructions. And you've got this little guy taped to the side of the enclosure. And this is not where it's supposed to be, because these three screw holes are where the ballast goes. So this has to come off. Where does it go after that? I don't know. Your guess is as good as mine. There's really no place for it. There's no extra screws to go with it. There's a couple screw holes right here. They do not fit. They do not line up with any of those holes. Even if you did, it would be poking out in a weird way and it would not fit into the car. And it can't really go very far because of these wires. So I think this is the driver or something for the daytime running lights, and that's what it does. It's in the same position as the daytime running lights are on the regular headlight. But anyway, so I had to fab up something to make this fit and not fall off. I was not going to use tape. That's pretty ridiculous. So came up with a mounting solution that I think will work fine. It's not awesome, but it should work fine. So let's get out the other headlight and we'll be ready to proceed. People keep hitting my car. My fenders are looking pretty beat up these days. The first step is you have to get the light out. So you can do that by taking off the bumper cover, and what there's going to be is several screws in here. These are 8mm, and I recommend just taking off the tire. It makes it easier. You can also rotate the tire in and work on it that way, but especially on the passenger side, if you have, like me, the sport package with an oil cooler, there's a bunch of other stuff happening in there, and it makes accessibility very difficult. So I recommend just taking off the tire. So you can jack it up one side at a time and get the tire off. Then you're going to have, once you've got the inner liner cover off, it's going to expose a couple of screw holes that are going to be right here, and that'll allow this to pop off. You're going to have to take off the bolts around the bottom side at the under tray so that can be free. And then you're going to have just a couple bolts, which I've already removed. There's 4 Torx 30 bolts here. And if you want all the details of the bumper cover removal, you can check out my ballast and Xenon light replacement video, which I get into more detail. So I'm just going to cover it quickly here. The light comes out just like that. We've basically got a couple screws here, and we've got a screw on kind of the back side, and then the annoying screws are actually, there's 2 that come in like this, right down here, and that allows you to remove the headlight and the enclosure, which looks like. So this is the enclosure housing that it sits in. So the light, this is for the driver's side, so the light sits here, and you're going to have a couple of screws in here and on that side that screw to this. So you're going to transfer your housing over to the new headlight as well. All right, so looking at it from the back with the wheel liner off, we've basically got 2 bolts right there that need to come off. That's the top of the bumper. And then to get the housing out, you'll need to remove this one. It's a T30. You can ignore that one. That can come off later because we're just going to take off the entire housing. And then we've got a couple of more T30s, as I mentioned, at the back. So, and then 2 on the top. So first we're going to pop off these 2 and get the bumper kind of out of the way. All right, so with those 2 removed and the 4 around the front, T30s removed as well, it will pop off. And you don't have to do this necessarily on both sides at the same time. I already had it off from doing it on the passenger side. It does make it easier. You get a lot more clearance, but you can kind of bend it out of the way. And also you want to make sure not to hang it off of this loom to the fog lamps. And also there's this other wire that goes down to a module that's in the, it's actually attached to the wheel arch liner. All right, so with this exposed, we can see our entire housing, and we're going to take off that one T30 that's at the back. It's around behind here. And then we're going to take off the T30 right there and right there. And then there's 2 more lurking inside there. All right, and last thing to do is we're going to pop off the harness here. That's the only connector on the back. All right, now that we have some wiggle room, we can, and we've slid off that, you can kind of move this around, and you can see in there's a couple little clips that are holding this loom that goes around, and it's got, I've already taken it out because it's annoying, one of these little guys, and you basically just have to wiggle it out. They kind of get tweaked. You can take a little needle nose plier and kind of squeeze these down so that they'll come out, but they're sort of like one-way, like a little one-way loom holder. All right, so at this point you have your headlights out, and you need to begin the transferal process of all the stuff. Now, unfortunately, I totally screwed up the footage on this. I was somehow in time-lapse mode on my camera, and so the first half of this procedure is in time-lapse. But basically what we're going to do is we're going to first start with removing that plastic housing that goes around the headlight. And just in general, the tools you need for this are a couple of Torx drivers. You'll need a T30 for the housing. You'll need a T20 for the smaller bolts on the ballast. A regular screwdriver for the headlight itself. The new headlight is just Phillips head screws. And maybe a couple different needle noses, a small needle nose, and like a regular flathead screwdriver that you may use for just kind of prying. But that's really all you'll need for this. You will not have to open up the headlights from the front in any way. The lens does not come off during this procedure. So what you want to do is get yourself a nice work surface that has something soft. I've got some towel or something like this over the table, and just make it so that you're not going to scratch the lens. All right, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to open up the back of each headlight to see what we have to work with. The new headlights are screwed down, which actually is a design that I kind of prefer. It's less likely to leak. It has a better coverage for it. And the original equipment is held down by tabs, which you just have to release by prying up on them. And underneath that, you'll see the place where the xenon bulb goes and where the motor is that controls the light movement. And we're going to start also by taking off the ballast off of the original. And to do that, there are two clips. One, the metal clip, which is the main wire that's shielded and insulated. It just pulls straight off. There's no clips. And then the other one does have a clip, and what you're going to want to do is there's a small basically tab that needs to be pressed in with a small flat-headed screwdriver, and then it will release and you'll be able to pull that clip off. You shouldn't jerk on it really hard because that thing is I think soldered in directly to a circuit board, so if you pull too hard it'll mess up the ballast and you don't want to have to buy a new one. Next, you're going to want to remove that line that goes between the bulb and the ballast. It's shielded and it's held in by a couple clips. You can just work that out and feed it through. This line is not included in the original thing, so you're going to have to use it, but that's the only wiring harness that has to be transferred over. Everything else is just parts of the equipment. So we fished that in, and we got it connected here to the ballast. And one thing to note when putting the ballast in here is you want to make sure that the gasket that runs around the outside of that is sealing correctly and it's not crimping or getting folded over or anything like that. So what you can do is put a little swipe of like a silicone lubricant on there. That'll help it slide in a little bit better if you're having trouble. But otherwise you can get that in, and we can reinstall our T20 Torx bits here. This allows us to now put this back in. So you can see it's packed in there pretty good. And we just pop this on and put the screws back on. All right, so now we've got this back on, and we can move our adaptive headlight module over from here to here. And we're going to take off these Torx, and it just plugs in right there. All right, so when removing this, it just pulls straight back. There's no clips. If you look inside, there are some clips, but that's basically so that this can be pushed back into the housing. So you don't need to do anything with that. This does have a little gasket seal as well, which can make it a little stiff. So you're just going to pull straight back and then move over here. Make sure it's oriented the right way and place it down nice and snug. And replace the Torx screws. All right, so we got our module in. Now the next part is right here. This little guy is the motor for the adaptive, up and down movement that it does, the self-leveling. And so there's a little sticker in there that tells you the direction of where to rotate. This is just a placeholder so that it doesn't vibrate in shipping. So we're going to remove this and it just gets thrown away. And then we do the same thing on the other side. So, well, my sticker was wrong. I had to rotate counterclockwise. So to get that out, basically rotate. It's going to come free a little bit and then it's going to be stuck again. And so what it is I don't know if you can see in there, but there is a little place for this little ball to go, and by moving the actual light housing up and down a little bit, you can release some of the pressure, and once it's rotated slightly, it'll rotate like 1/8 of a turn, then you can pull it straight back. You may want to just grab onto it with some pliers like this and pull straight back, then it'll come. Because this little gasket in here makes it kind of stiff. Alright, so now that that's ready, we can do the same thing on the actual original housing. So the first thing is to remove the wiring. You notice that this plug is exactly the same as the one that's waiting for it over there. And then we're going to rotate counterclockwise, just like that one. Should have known. And this one is also kind of a pain. You can see how this moves now with it released. Once you've got it removed, then you can get it to free. It's got a little ball on the end too that has to be worked out of its housing. Do not just pull super hard on this. There's no reason for that. It will come free. Alright, so this is what this looks like. We've got a little ball in the end. It's plastic in this case, but this is the motor. It's also got a little O-ring gasket here. So, and the deal is I'll get a little close up here. So you can see into there, it's got a little cup, and you can see how this will move. So you have to work it basically the little ball downwards, and so it'll come out kind of at an angle. But if you kind of manipulate this, it'll be able to slide free. All right. So if you inspect the motor, you'll notice that one side of the tab here that it clicks in is bigger than the other two. So you're going to line up that big tab with the bigger hole on the new housing. And the bigger tab seems to be facing that direction. So we'll put that in. You want to get it to drop in, and then you'll be able to kind of look from this direction. It's a little bit awkward, but if you look down through this hole, this direction, you'll be able to see whether that ball is in the little cup for it. If you just screw it down hard and it's not in that cup, well, your adaptive thing is going to be not working. It could damage it when this thing spins, and this is going to be pointed in completely the wrong direction. It's probably going to be pointed like downwards in some weird way. So you want to take the extra time, make sure that the little ball thing is in the little cup thing. All right. That is by far the most annoying part of this, getting that in there. Basically what you have to do is line up the big one, the big tab on there, and have it sort of be tilted this way, and have it go in, and then with this firmly push this direction, meaning it's going to be at the highest position back there. When you're pushing this back, this is going to raise. Then you can click that in, and also tilt forward. So it's going to kind of go in, tilt back. Once it's back, you'll feel it, and you'll be able to rotate it to the closed position. Now, also in my case, this wire was kind of being pinched back here, there's like a little cable guide behind here, I think, and it was sort of pinching it. So, but I just kind of pulled on it a little bit to get some more slack, and I was able to get over to here to pull it in. All right, so now we can unclip this little guy, and carefully moving this over. As you can see, there's that little rod on there. It inserts only one way into the housing and kind of clips in and holds itself, and then these are going to go in on top, and then you can see how this is being routed. You want this to route sort of down here so that it's away from the housing sort of as much as possible. You can clean that up once you get it plugged in. Anyway, it's going to go like that. And this doesn't have clips like the original, so you just kind of have to work it into position like so. So now we'll be able to take this guy and put it right back on. All right, so now we're left with this crazy thing. This was taped right here as shipped. You can't put it there. That's not a good place for it. I don't think the screw holes for these Torx bits on top of the ballast don't fit, but even if they did, I don't think it would actually fit into the car with this right here. So basically it has to go pretty much right here. Now, I put the housing kind of lightly on top, so this is upside down. This housing is normally on the bottom. And what I did on the other side was basically attach this to the housing, something like this. And I drilled 2 small holes and bolted it down so that when it's in the proper orientation, gravity, it's just going to sit on here like a shelf, and the bolts are going to keep it in place despite the fact that there's nothing on the other side holding it. It's pretty snugly in there. I route these wires so that they're not getting pinched, but it's just kind of sitting in there nice and snug, and shouldn't vibrate around too much, and it definitely won't fall out. That's what I was concerned about. I can't imagine they expected you to use tape. That's the only sketchy part of this install. Otherwise, it's acceptable. I mean, for the price, moving over everything, I'm okay with that. This part, weird. So anyway, we'll put this together and see what it looks like. All right, so this is what it looks like. Basically, on the other side, I had 2 of these little bolts. They're very tiny. I don't know what they are, 8 or 9, 6, 1/8 or something like that. Maybe a little bit bigger, 5/8. No, that's way too big. Whatever this is, as a bolt, nut and bolt. And then I ran out of these, so I just used a self-tapper on the second one. I had 2 of these on the original one, but as you can see, it's in there pretty good. It doesn't vibrate, anything like that. So what we'll do is we'll just slide this housing back on, and we should be all good, ready to go back on the car. Now, on this, the connector kind of flops around, so what I did on the other side was zip tie this guy to here so that it would sit in one position and not really move. So that's up to you how you want to do that, but let's see what it looks like. Get it back in the car. All right, got it loosely mounted in there. Start it up. All right. That is the TPS, which is unplugged. And let's see what we got. All right. No brights. All right. So once you've got it tested out and everything's good, then you're ready to bolt it back up and put the cover back on, and then we can make sure that TPS warning light goes away. I think it's because the module is on that fender liner, and I've got it unplugged on the driver's side. Now, before we put everything back together on the back side here, I got the headlight bolted in. But if you look at this, one major difference with the new set of headlights and the old one is that it's got a bunch of wires that are exposed outside the housing. On the original, the wires were inside the housing. And on mine car, I've got an oil cooler, and these things are right next to it. In fact, before I kind of wound this up above it, it was like touching it. So that is some of the stock harness, and it's got some heat wrap on it. So I may do the same for this. So I had a little bit of this wiring loom. This is really cheap stuff, but it provides a little extra protection. And what I may do is put some of this on, as well as a little heat reflective tape, just to give a little bit of extra protection for those wires. Let's see what we can do. Nice. That's that super OEM look we all crave. So this is just some Reflectix tape. It's good to like 400 degrees or something like that, and you can buy it at any home improvement store. It's for actual ducts. It's a tape for duct tape, but not the fabric back kind, the actual real reflective heat kind. Anyway, I've used this in automotive purposes for years. It works fine. So this just goes on top of the plastic loom harness, which is split loom, which protects in and of itself as well. So we'll keep that together. It looks just like OEM, that OEM one behind there. Looks pretty close. So that looks good. I put a little tape up there. There's a couple wires running that direction. That little boxy thing, I don't know, maybe slap some more on there just to be safe. And that should do it. We should be able to put this thing back together. Once we get the bumper, don't forget to reconnect your harness right here to this hole, and I've got this little clip in here. So make sure you button all those up the way it was originally, and we should be good. All right, so last step is you got to adjust your headlights. And so I've got this up against a wall. I'm about 25 feet away, and what you do is the adjustment knob is right there, and it's an 8mm. So you get your 8 on there, and if you tighten it, it raises. Lowers. So we'll see this. It's on. So I'll be tightening it, and you can see it go down just a little bit. And then, so basically what you're trying to do is you need it to be below aim at 25 feet. It should drop by about, I don't know the official thing actually, but I usually make it so that it drops by about an inch or so. And so you measure the height of the headlight, and then you measure against your wall, and you make sure that it drops. Now, if you look on the other side, it's super high. Look at how high that is above the headlight. So that's going to blind oncoming traffic. You don't want that. So you do it on both sides, and we should be all set.